Buju, wago shindigu minawa migazi and dodem, kazaga squaji mekag, hindunjiba. I wanted to take a minute today to share with you a little bit about Ojibwe practices and beliefs around the use of tobacco, and also what we can do as Anishinaabe people to decolonize our use of tobacco. In the Ojibwe culture, anytime we want to take something from this world, harvest a plant, take the life of a bird, a fish, or an animal, or even ask something of the Creator in the form of a prayer, we can't just take. We have to provide a reciprocal offering. And tobacco is the tool that we were given to do that. So when we harvest a plant, we're to put tobacco there. If we're going to harvest an animal, we put tobacco there. If we're going to ask someone to do something for us in a spiritual sense, we make a tobacco offering. And similarly, when we make a prayer, as we do this, what we're doing is giving thanks, but also paying for whatever it is that we're going to be taking. And taking without offering that payment could invite bad karma, payment in some other form. And so this is an important part of our cultural practice. At the same time, I think this practice has often been misunderstood, both outside of Native communities and even inside Native communities. Ojibwe country is really big. And in the southern Ojibwe communities, the southern part of the Great Lakes, some people cultivated a Virginia leaf tobacco, what a scientist would call the tobacco plant. But in much of Ojibwe country, that's actually not what we used when we were making tobacco offerings. More commonly, we would harvest misquabimij, which is red willow, or red osier. It's a form of dogwood. They're common all over the place, growing in the ditches and swamps throughout Ojibwe country. And when in my family, when we harvest this plant, what we do is we'll make a tobacco offering to the tallest of the red willow plants in that area and not harvest that one. That's considered like the chief plant. And we'd harvest the other ones around it. And then we peel off the outer bark. In the springtime, it actually peels very easily. You could even run a fingernail down the bark and twist it, and the outer bark will pop right off. And then the part that we actually use for the tobacco is the inner bark, the next layer of bark. And so you can even take a butter knife or something and scrape off the inner bark, dry it out in the sun, or if you want to speed up the process, you could put it in an oven, although it does dry quickly, so you'd have to watch that. And then once it's dried out, it can be used as tobacco. And I think there are a couple of things that are really nice about our traditional tobacco form. One is when we make an offering to harvest the tobacco, then we're paying for the product that we're going to use to make offerings. If we buy it in a store, although there's a financial payment, it doesn't have the same spiritual gravitas and it doesn't have the same spiritual impact. So I think when we make our own tobacco this way, it's more spiritually potent. In addition to that, this form of tobacco has no tar, no nicotine, no 287 addictive chemical substances that kill you dead when you use them as directed. And by reclaiming this form of tobacco use, we can decolonize the product that is centered in a lot of our offerings. And for a lot of the schools and programs that are trying to support Ojibwe culture, it creates a way to do that that honors the Clean Indoor Air Act and the tobacco-free school zone policy and can honor the indigenous use of tobacco. Now, a lot of people also there's even a ceremony to farm the Virginia leaf tobacco. So especially amongst the Ho-Chunk, also known as Winnebago and Potawatomi, there are even special people who are designated as keepers of the tobacco seeds. In Ojibwe country, less regimented, but there's still a ceremony to planting, gardening, and harvesting that tobacco product. There was a spiritual leader that I spent a lot of time with. His name was Archie Mose. He was born in 1901. He died in 1996. And he was good friends with a Ho-Chunk man named Jim Funmaker. And Jim Funmaker would come to visit Archie sometimes when I was there. And among other things, Jim Funmaker grew his own, leaf tobacco in his garden. And he had a great sense of humor about things. One time he came to an Ojibwe funeral. Someone was passing around store-bought tobacco, and the old man was saying, "What? What? Look at that. That's white man tobacco. They bought it in a store. I can tell. My leaves are this high. Hey, you," he's talking to the guy next to me. "Do you smoke the white man tobacco?" And he didn't know what to say. He's like, "Yeah." "Oh, that's why you're so dizzy all the time. Too many chemicals." And of course, we're all laughing at this point because he had such a hilarious way of describing it. But he was making an important point about indigenous tobacco. Sometimes Jim Funmaker would come to visit Archie and he'd bring garbage bags full of his leaf tobacco. And I'd sit there with Archie. Archie had been whittling, even as an old man, he'd whittle his own tobacco. And he would trade one garbage bag of his red willow tobacco for one garbage bag of Jim Funmaker's leaf tobacco. And they'd both swap and then they'd mix their tobaccos together. And so in Ojibwe, Misquabimij is the red willow plant. Once you've harvested and processed that kind of tobacco, we call it apakuzagun. And once you've taken that tobacco and mixed it with another form of tobacco, like the leaf tobacco, the mixture is called giniginig. And this is where the word kinnikinnick comes from, giniginig, meaning mixture. All forms of tobacco in the Ojibwe language are called a sema, which is our general word for tobacco and an offering. In some ceremonial contexts, we'll also refer to tobacco as binda kujigan, and it's a certain type of ceremonial tobacco that's used in offerings. So there's several different words to refer to tobacco, but all to specific uses and applications of them. It's important that we honor our use of tobacco and our teachings that we were put here on earth, told to respect all things, respect all beings, and we were given the use of tobacco as a means to show that respect. So as we do so and honor this in the center of our culture, we can do it in a way that also encourages healthy practices. And so as somebody who officiates at a lot of ceremonies, we've actually been saying, okay, welcome to ceremony. You're going to need tobacco to make offerings, but we're not going to have pleasure smoking in our ceremony spaces because it's hard to pray for healing in a toxic environment. And we have elders and young people, people with health conditions, and everybody wanting to lead a long, healthy, happy life that will benefit from us keeping the space spiritually and chemically clean. And decolonizing our tobacco and using it as it was given to us is a great way to do that. Miigwech. Thanks for watching today. I'm Anton Treuer. Let's keep in touch. I'm active on social media, and my website has lots of information on my books, speaking engagements, free Ojibwe language resources, resources for teachers, and more. Miigwech.